The Whispering Willow. In a village that lay tucked between gentle, rolling hills and fields of wildflowers, there stood a grand ancient willow tree. It had grown beside a quiet pond for as long as anyone could remember, its branches draping over the water like a green waterfall. The villagers called it the Whispering Willow, for on calm nights it seemed to sing lullabies, its leaves rustling with the softest breeze, as if sharing secrets with the wind. Children in the village would often sit beneath its branches, listening to the gentle murmurs, their eyes growing heavy with sleep. One particularly clear night, under a sky dusted with stars, a little girl named Lila lay in her bed wide awake. She had tried everything to fall asleep, but her thoughts seemed to dance around, restless and lively. Lila's mind was filled with questions and dreams, worries and wonders. She remembered her grandmother's stories of the magical willow that could lull even the busiest minds into peaceful sleep. So with a soft sigh she climbed out of bed, wrapped a cozy blanket around her shoulders, and tiptoed out of her quiet cottage. The village lay in a hush, the houses and lanterns casting soft pools of light on the cobbled streets. Lila walked past them through the village square, and out toward the edge of the village, where the willow stood beside the shimmering pond. The night air was cool, and the only sound was the gentle whisper of the wind as it brushed over the hills and fields. As she neared the willow, its branches swayed and a comforting low voice seemed to fill the air, as though the tree itself was speaking. "Why are you awake at such a late hour, little one?" it asked, its tone as soft as a lullaby. Startled but intrigued, Lila looked up into the willow's swaying branches. I couldn't sleep," she said, her voice no louder than a whisper. "There are too many thoughts in my head." The willow's branches brushed the pond, sending delicate ripples across the water. It chuckled, a sound like leaves dancing in the wind. "Ah, young hearts are often full of thoughts and dreams," it replied. "Perhaps I can tell you a story, one that may help ease your mind." Lila nodded, wrapping her blanket tighter around her, feeling safe under the willow's ancient branches. She settled against the tree's thick trunk, her eyes looking up into the tangled canopy of leaves that seemed to stretch forever into the sky. "Long ago," the willow began, "I was but a tiny seed, floating in the wind, carried by the breezes across mountains, rivers and fields. I saw snowy peaks and glistening rivers, and I drifted through forests where animals of all kinds wandered freely. But none of those places felt quite right. And then one day I floated down here beside this very pond, and I knew I had found my home." Lila could almost picture it, a small seed spinning and twirling through the air, exploring the world in search of a place to belong. She watched the branches sway as the tree continued, its voice as smooth as the night breeze. "As I grew," the willow said, "I listened to the world around me. I heard the songs of the birds in spring, the buzz of bees among the flowers in summer, and the gentle patter of raindrops on my leaves in autumn. With each season I stretched a little taller, dug my roots a little deeper, and soon I was as you see me now." "But did you ever feel lonely?" Lila asked, hugging her knees as she gazed at the pond, where the stars' reflections shimmered like tiny lanterns. The willow swayed, its leaves brushing against her cheeks like a warm embrace. "Sometimes," it admitted, "but I was never truly alone. The earth below kept me grounded, and the sky above watched over me. I found friends in the animals that visited, the squirrels who nested in my branches, the birds who sang to me each morning, and even the frogs by the pond who serenaded me on rainy nights." Lila's eyelids began to feel heavy, but she wanted to hear more. "Did you have any favorite visitors?" she asked. The willow chuckled softly. "Oh yes, there was a young boy many years ago much like you. He was full of dreams and questions and he'd visit me often sitting right where you are now. He loved to imagine far-off lands and adventure. Sometimes he'd tell me he wanted to sail the oceans, other times he'd dream of climbing the tallest mountains. But he always came back, saying that somehow this little pond in this tree felt like the most magical place of all." "What happened to him?" Lila murmured, her voice growing quieter. "He grew up," the willow said, its tone a touch wistful. "He traveled far and wide just as he dreamed, seeing wonders beyond imagining. He sailed seas that stretched to the horizon, walked through forests as old as time, and climbed mountains so high they touched the clouds. But each time he returned, he would sit here and tell me his stories, until he was old and his hair had turned silver like the stars." Lila could almost see it, the boy growing older, returning again and again to the willow, sharing tales of his travels, his adventures woven into the whispers of the tree. She felt herself drifting off, her thoughts slowing like the ripples in the pond. "But one day," the willow continued, "he grew too tired to travel anymore. He rested here one last time, telling me how the world was wide and wonderful, but that he'd always felt most at peace here by the pond. And so, his spirit found a home among my roots and branches. Now he is part of the whispers you hear in the breeze." Lila sighed, her eyes closed now, feeling as if she too was part of the willow's stories, her dreams wrapping around her like the tree's long branches. The willow's voice grew softer, its words like a gentle hum. "And each night as the world falls quiet, I remember the people who have come to visit, the dreams they shared, and the warmth they left behind. They are all part of me now, woven into my branches, resting in my roots. The stars above sparkled, casting a soft light over the pond, and the willow's branches swayed, creating a melody that seemed to echo across the hills, over the village and into the night. Lila's breathing slowed, a peaceful smile on her face as she drifted into sleep, knowing she was safe under the watchful branches of the whispering willow. And as the village slept, the willow continued its lullaby, singing to the night, to the stars, and to the little girl who dreamed beneath its ancient protective arms. Good night, dear dreamer, and may the whispers of the willow guide you to restful, gentle dreams.